Before I lay out the gruesome details of the case, I want to first provide a disclaimer that I will be discussing very sensitive topics, and if you are not in the best place to receive this information, I would advise that you care for yourself and maybe refer to another video. I will be covering the 2011 attack in Norway that consists of a mass shooting and a tragic bombing. Anders Behring Breivik, born in 1979 in Oslo, Norway, would go on to injure hundreds, take the lives of 77 people, and lead one of the deadliest attacks in Norway since World War II. Breivik was born to two parents, who would later divorce as he was still a baby. His father wasn't too present in his life, and his mother, Wenche Behring, suffered from depression. She too had a difficult relationship with her own mother, who was paralyzed and blamed Wenche for her condition. Breivik attended a prestigious school in Oslo, where he was surrounded by children from affluent families. This environment gave him a sense of belonging to an elite social class, but he remained aware of the economic and social differences between himself and his peers. Academically, he was an average student, but he was not well liked due to his arrogance and his tendency to bully those he perceived as weaker. He reportedly took pleasure in the suffering of both other children and animals. At the age of 13, Breivik joined a group of graffiti artists, finding a sense of rebellion and belonging. However, his desire to exert dominance over the group led to his rejection from the group. At 16, he enrolled in an Oslo commerce school, and during his time in school, he worked as a telemarketer and salesman, managing to earn 200,000 Norwegian kroner in a single stock market transaction, which is the equivalent to about 17,865 US dollars. Following this financial success, he dropped out of school in 1998. Breivik's ideological development began early, as he aligned himself with the right-wing Progress Party, which opposed immigration and warned against the perceived dangers of Islam and multiculturalism. He believed in the threat of Islamization and feared that immigrants were eroding European culture and society. His views were considered too extreme, and he was never fully accepted into the party or invited to run for office. He also harbored deep resentment towards left-wing ideologies, feminism, and gender equality. In 2001, Breivik found temporary success selling fake university diplomas, earning up to 30,000 kroner per month. In 2004, he turned to online dating, seeking women from Eastern European countries, whom he believed would be more compliant. One woman he met described him as a male chauvinist. Some who knew Breivik speculated that he might have been secretly gay, as he was meticulous about his style and appearance, and frequently wore makeup. This is what they believed to be the true reason as to why he experienced trouble in romantic relationships with women. Socially, Breivik struggled to form real-life relationships. He preferred to position himself above others rather than engage in meaningful connections. He immersed himself in the online gaming world, particularly World of Warcraft, using the alias Anders Nordic. Despite his heavy involvement, he remained an outsider, and others in the gaming community considered his views delusional and absurd. By 2006, he had become increasingly detached from reality, obsessing over the perceived conflict between the West and Islam. Breivik actively engaged with extremist content online, frequenting websites such as Robert Spencer's Jihad Watch and the neo-Nazi forum Stormfront. He consumed materials by authors like Bruce Bauer and speeches by politicians such as Geert Wilders. He was particularly influenced by the blogger Fjordman, to which he tried to reach out via email. Breivik never received a response. Breivik's inability to develop meaningful relationships stemmed from his arrogance and desire to assert dominance over others, which led to his social isolation. He struggled to connect with people on an equal level and preferred to position himself above them, which further alienated him. This isolation pushed him deeper into online communities, where he sought validation through extremist ideologies. His radical views, which developed early on, aligned closely with the typical profile of mass shooters, socially disconnected individuals, consumed by a sense of grievance and superiority. The warning signs of his radicalization, including his fixation on perceived cultural threats and his increasing detachment from reality, were evident but ultimately overlooked. In preparation for the attacks, on May 18, 2009, Breivik registered a one-man company called GeoFarm, claiming to be growing vegetables. In 2010, he began collecting chemicals in his mother's basement. He attempted to illegally acquire firearms from the Czech Republic, but ultimately obtained them legally in Norway. After completing the mandatory 15 hours in training, he gained permission to purchase firearms, acquiring a Glock 17 pistol and a Sturmruger Mini 14 semi-automatic carbine, along with significant quantities of ammunition and accessories. In December 2010, he purchased 3 kilograms of sodium nitrate and 150 kilograms of aluminum powder to enhance explosive power. Breivik acquired a fuse from a store known for selling materials without scrutiny, advertising them through online forums specializing in explosive device construction. Using his company as a cover, he purchased large quantities of fertilizer, the primary ingredient in his bomb. In the spring of 2011, he rented an abandoned farmhouse to store chemicals and prepare the bomb. He meticulously listed all necessary equipment and calculated costs, purchasing various chemicals from local stores and online sources. Despite the high risk of accidental explosion during the bomb-making process, Breivik continued undetected. In June 2011, the farm owner's daughter unexpectedly visited, and Breivik considered killing her if she discovered his plans. She luckily didn't gain any suspicion. Breivik then selected July 22, 2011 for the attack, strategically timing it when many officers would be on leave and the Prime Minister would be working in office. 2 days prior, he loaded explosives into a van disguised as a sewer cleaning vehicle, to which he turned into a vehicle-borne improvised explosive device, meaning the van itself would act as a bomb. He then stalked a Fiat Doblo with firearms and ammunition. On July 21st, he parked the vehicles near the government district and took a taxi home to finalize his preparations. On the eve of the attack, Breivik emailed his 15-page manifesto titled 2083, a European Declaration of Independence, to approximately 1,000 recipients, outlining his extremist views and justifying his planned actions. On July 22, 2011, Breivik returned to his van that he left parked near the government building and changed into a police uniform. He drove to the entrance of the government building, parked the vehicle, and walked away with a gun drawn, anticipating potential security personnel. However, no intervention occurred, and only one individual, Andreas Olsen, noticed the suspicious presence of a man in uniform with a gun leaving in a Fiat Doblo. The explosion occurred at 15:25, killing 7 people instantly, with an 8th victim dying later in the hospital. A total of 209 people were injured in the tragic event. Emergency services arrived within 3 minutes, and Oslo University Hospital declared a state of emergency. Olsen reported his observations to the police, providing details of the suspect and the vehicle. However, due to communication failures within the police force, Breivik was not apprehended in traffic and continued toward his next target at Lake Tyrifjorden. Authorities focused their efforts on the aftermath of the explosion, while the media and traffic control centers were not informed of the suspect's description. This allowed Breivik to proceed with his plan unimpeded. Following the bombing of the government building in Oslo, Anders Behring Breivik continued with his meticulously planned assault on July 22, 2011. Breivik's next target was a summer camp organized by the Workers' Youth League, AUF, on Utøya Island, located on Lake Tyrifjorden. The camp was attended by approximately 600 teenagers and young adults. After leaving the government district, Breivik drove his Fiat Doblo van, loaded with firearms and ammunition, to the ferry landing at Utøya, the access point for Utøya Island. Dressed in a police uniform, he arrived at the ferry at around 17 Hundquag. His disguise allowed him to avoid suspicion, as he claimed to be part of the police force sent to ensure the safety of the island after the bombing in Oslo. At the dock, Breivik was met by the island staff, including the camp leader, Monica Bosai, who escorted him across the lake to the island. Upon arrival, Bosai and a security officer, Trond Berntsen, began questioning him about his purpose on the island. Without warning, Breivik retrieved his gun and shot both of them at close range, killing them instantly. This marked the beginning of a 72-minute rampage. Armed with his pistol and a semi-automatic rifle, Breivik moved methodically across the island, targeting the camp attendees. Using his police uniform to create a false sense of security, he lured victims into exposing themselves before opening fire. Many of the teenagers attempted to flee or hide, taking shelter in buildings, behind rocks, or in dense vegetation. Some even jumped into the lake in a desperate attempt to swim to safety. During the massacre, Breivik moved deliberately, taking his time to search for and kill those in hiding. He frequently reloaded his weapons and shouted commands, further manipulating the campers into believing he was there to help. Survivors later reported that he displayed no signs of emotion during the attack. On the mainland, authorities began receiving distress calls from the island at approximately 1724. Due to miscommunication and limited resources following the earlier bombing, the response to the Utøya shooting was delayed. The local police had difficulty organizing transport to the island, and the specialized Delta Force team did not arrive at the scene until 1827. Meanwhile, on the island, the massacre continued unabated. Breivik used his knowledge of the terrain and his arsenal of weapons to maximize casualties. In total, he murdered 69 individuals on Utøya Island, most of whom were teenagers. Another 110 people were injured, many critically. When the police finally arrived and approached Breivik, he surrendered without resistance. He later admitted to the attacks, stating that they were part of a calculated effort to draw attention to his far-right, anti-immigration ideologies. The tragedy on Utøya Island remains one of the darkest days in Norway's history, symbolizing the devastating impact of extremist ideologies and highlighting critical flaws in the nation's emergency response systems. The events of July 22, 2011, remain an indelible scar on Norway's history, not only for the brutality of the attacks, but for the lives that were senselessly taken. The victims on Utøya Island were young individuals filled with hope, dreams, and aspirations to shape a better future. They were gathered that day to discuss ideas, to learn, and to engage with the world as active citizens, an embodiment of youthful optimism and potential. We honor the memory of the 69 individuals who lost their lives on the island and the 8 who perished in Oslo. These were sons, daughters, siblings, and friends whose lives were cut tragically short. Their absence leaves a void in the hearts of their families and in the community that cherished them. As we remember those who fell that day, it is crucial to reflect on the resilience of the survivors and the enduring spirit of unity and love that rose from the tragedy. Their legacy reminds us of the importance of standing against hatred, preserving the values of tolerance and democracy, and striving to build a world where such violence has no place. May they never be forgotten. To conclude this video, I wanted to give a little insight into my personal opinions in this case, as I think way too many signs and indicators go unnoticed. It's very frustrating to think that low-life people like Breivik cause such grief, all because they led a pathetic life, and that there are even more people like him brewing up similar plans. What's even more frustrating is that there isn't a simple fix or solution to prevent things like this from happening. But I hope this information can maybe help people recognize patterns and say something if they see something similar in someone they know. With that, I'm going to conclude the video here. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you stick around for more videos in the future.